Welcome to the Coach's Edge with JY. I'm Coach James Young, and welcome to episode 6. Usually we drop these every Wednesday, but there was breaking news in the world of college athletics over the last 24 hours. Two big things that took place, and I felt compelled to come on and talk to you all about these things, as from a coach's angle, I think my takeaways are sometimes different than the general public, and I'm not afraid to speak my mind. The big story, or the bigger story, I should say, is President Donald Trump yesterday dropped an executive order that dealt with college athletics. And it kind of hit with a couple of things. Number one, he wanted to create a 5-year participation window, right? A one-time transfer without penalty, which we would call a free transfer, a ban on fraudulent NIL schemes, and protections against agent conduct. And when we talk about the free transfer, if you were to transfer a second or third time, you would have to sit out 1 year. Before I get into what I think about this and what I've heard, listen, I'm going to be honest with you. Me personally, there are two things that I don't talk about publicly unless you have a private conversation with me. It's politics and it's religion. So I'm going to leave politics out of it in regards to my view. I will tell you that some people that I spoke to, and I spoke to men's Power 4 coaches, women's Power 4 coaches, agents, NIL people, people affiliated with USA Basketball. Listen, some people are thinking we got other problems to deal with in this country. We don't need to worry about this. Like I said, I'm not getting into that, because that's not my lane. That's the lane that I choose to live in. But as a coach, I feel like we have to make sure that people are educated in regards to how this is done in this country in regard to college athletics. Folks, men's and women's basketball and football are what we call the three big revenue generating sports in this country in regards to college athletics, in regards to the amount of money that they bring in via their TV deals and in through the gate. So when you take a look at it, I just want to take those two and kind of compare them, because the revenue stream is not very similar between those two. Let's start with college football and make sure you understand how it works and how it breaks down. The college football playoff, right? The 12-team playoff that we have in college football, it is not a private equity, right? ESPN basically pays those conferences directly, right? And the NCAA has no control in regards to the cut or takeout. Remember, folks, this is about a $7.8 billion deal. I think it's a $1.3 billion annually. I think it ends in 2031, 32. With, depending on the league, you can get as high as $21 million, which I think is the Big Ten and SEC. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the ACC is about a $13 million payout, right? Now, when the performances are paid out, a deep run can get you $20 million or more for a single school's conference share. I think the ACC, with Miami making it, I think Miami got the majority or all the share. I'm not sure how the Big Ten did it with Indiana. So that money gets funneled, right? None from the NCAA. They get funneled through the conferences, and then they go to the conference can decide if it gets broken up evenly, if it goes to a couple of schools, or it goes to all to that school, right? So that is the model that we have for college football. Let's go to college basketball. Do know that March Madness generates roughly $900 million a year, right? That is what the NCAA collects. So remember what I just said before with college football, they don't collect any of the money. They're getting $900 million a year in regards to revenue that comes in. Now, basically, and when I talk about March Madness, let's break down into the tournament, right? It's really $1 billion, but $900 million for the tournament. The schools get about $226 to $264 million of that pot. That's only about 25% of that money goes back to the schools, right? And then there's basically almost a unit model, right? That's based off of 6 years, and that's how the money is distributed, right? And then the smaller schools can get a share of that from even if the school made the tournament, right? So the money takes 6 years over in time to get paid out. But if you really think about it, if 25% or 25 cents on the dollar is going to just the teams that made the tournament, what's happening to the other 75% of it? Well, folks, that's going right to the NCAA, right? The remaining 25% of the money goes back to the NCAA, the revenue, the deal with overhead and non-revenue sports across all of Division I. Ready? Non-revenue sports all over Division I. So that means the money from March Madness in the tournament, that 75%, is going to sports that don't generate revenue, right? You think about Power 4 basketball, those teams are writing the check for everyone else and only getting a fraction in return. And when you think about the overall revenue that comes in for the NCAA, 85% of it comes from March Madness. So 85% of it, of their revenue comes from March Madness, but only 25% of the $900 million goes to the schools, and it's in a unit system based off of 6 years. So now you know that it's done differently between college football and college basketball. So when I was talking to some people in regards to this, a good friend of mine, and I'll name probably, actually I won't name him, a top AAU guy said to me, this isn't the answer, but maybe this is a start because it's broken. And I can tell you this, everyone I spoke to, not one said this is the answer, okay? And I want to give you some of what the pushback that people are saying, non-political. Number one, if you're going to hold these players to 5 and 5 years, are you going to hold coaches to their contracts and make them stay? How about the new coach at Providence? If I'm not mistaken, I think it's North or South Alabama, USF, Providence. Will Wade, McNeese, NC State, LSU. So if you get to leave school and get one free transfer, as a college coach, do you have the permission to coach 3 schools in 3 years, or do you have to sit out 1 year? Because you're going to make the players sit out in this rule if you go past the 1 free transfer. 2, you're saying these are student athletes. Are you going to put these kids into contracts which are binding, which says that they have to stay at these schools after they transfer? Do you guys see the slippery slope that this is creating? Now, if you want to think back to when I played college basketball in the 90s, you got 4 years, or you had 5 years to play 4 years of eligibility. That's the way it used to be. So I do understand at least that part of why you think about the 4 and 5. But now the 5 and 5 is something different. And I think this is where we know we were going, is giving, especially with COVID, everybody got that 5th year. So you kind of thought that this was going to come down the pipe. The interesting thing is this. Once I sat down and I talked, and I got this from a mid-major coach on the men's side, I got this from a Power 4 coach on the women's side, and I got this from someone I know very closely that's heavily connected to an NIL collective and a Power 4 conference. They said it. It's time. It's time that we collectively bargain. It's time that we collectively bargain with the players, because the revenue stream, particularly in college basketball, is not fair. If you think about players generating non-figure revenues for their institution that redistributes most of the money not back to them, right? Without collective bargaining, there's no seat at the table for the players. There's nothing for them. Everything is, they make all the money. And with all due respect, folks, I get it. There are some great coaches in this country, whether it's Dan Hurley or Dawn Staley or Corey Close or Mark Campbell. These guys are unbelievable. But they'll all tell you they can't win if they don't have the talent with them. So the players, in my opinion, and Coach Martelli talked about this last week. Let's be honest, folks. It's pay for play. They're pros. They are absolutely pros. If we're talking about NIL and collectives, folks, they are pros. If they are pros, it's time to give them a seat at the table. The collective bargaining gives athletes the leverage to demand a more fair revenue share and a system that rewards performance, not just one that labors to fund the rest of Division I. So if I'm AJ DeBanza and I'm bringing in all this money to BYU, and I know AJ is probably a rough example because he was probably one of the highest paid NIL during the year, but if I deliver this to you, should the money that you benefit by making the NCAA tournament or from March Madness, shouldn't I get more of what I need to in order for my worth? Players know their worth. And I think it's important that we understand that. Now, the agent stuff is a mess. I've said it before, and Coach Martelli brought it up last week. I think the agents need to be vetted. They have to go through a process. Anybody just can't go ahead and be an agent. You have to do the right thing and get approved by the NCAA so that not anybody can do it. So I think there's things with agents that they need to do. I think we need to look at the transfer, how it's done, right? Because I think it's too much of the wild, wild west. But I don't know if you could do this in men's and women's basketball if you look at what they bring to the table and what they are getting back. It's not fair to them. And we are asking a lot out of them. And I want to tell something to you folks, and I know people are saying, well, they get a free tuition. That's their pay. Okay. So is this kid that gets a presidential scholarship to a school and they get a full academic scholarship. That's their pay for play, right? Pay to perform academically. But they're not asking them to put in 20 hours a week during the season, not including travel, 8 hours during the off season, right? Giving up sometimes 8 to 10 weeks or 8 to 9 weeks out of your summer break when everybody else gets to go home because you're back on campus working out, using your 8 hours and taking classes, right? And you're not asked to perform, this weekend in Indianapolis in front of 70,000 people if you're Connecticut, Illinois, Arizona, and Michigan. You're not asked to do that. You're not asked to do that if you are, last night, South Carolina and UConn, UCLA, and Texas. The everyday student isn't asked to do that. So I want to push back on this, folks. Don't think just because you get a scholarship to a kid full ride, that's enough to know what you're paying them is what they're worth. So like I said before, models are different. College football, right, through the playoff, it's simply sent, to the conferences based on how deep the runs are made. Bowl payouts, are the same thing. None of it goes to the NCAA. Whereas the NCAA March Madness brings in $1 billion, $900 million for the tournament, and only 25% of that goes to the school over a 6-year unit period, and very little of that, if you really think about it, could actually go to the players. It's not fair that they're only getting 25% of the share, and we don't even know if they're getting that 25%, if they're doing the lion's share. Folks, they're pros. start treating them like them, and allow them to collectively bargain. I was only coming on when I saw this to talk about one thing, but whoa, last night, everything got flipped on his head. Let's take a look at the end of the South Carolina UConn game and look at the fireworks, and let's discuss it.
Here, the officials will hold the players. Now Dawn and Geno getting into it a little bit on the sideline as Geno has to be held back. And Dawn and Geno, that's part of what makes this rivalry such a compelling one, as they exchanged words at center court.
I can tell you that, some of my closest friends, we've gotten into it and yelled on sidelines, and it was an intense game, and congratulations to South Carolina on a 62-48 win, knocking off UConn for the ranked unbeaten and setting up a national championship game in which they will take on Corey Close and UCLA. I want people to understand a couple of things here really quickly before I get to the actual postgame. Geno Auriemma is a mastermind, right, in regards to how he gets his team ready to play. But I don't think people understand what Dawn Staley does. Dawn Staley is intense. Dawn Staley will want to beat her own family to win a game. That's how competitive she is. And she gets her players to believe in that. But also they play a very physical style of defense. And it's very simple. When you are playing, you play very physical, you allow the referees to dictate the game early. Extra aggressive, let them play. Really touchy, lay off. UConn gets you with finesse. South Carolina gets you with physicality. And the referees had one or two ways to do it. They chose physicality. And from there, the more physical team had the advantage. And that was South Carolina. I'm going to tell you this right now. There's no one I've seen since Pat Summitt that can take Geno Auriemma's team and make him look like that on offense. Nobody. They looked completely uncomfortable to the point where Geno went to Holly Rowe at the end of the third quarter and blasted the officials for what happened because of the fact that the fouls were going the other way. I've seen it. As players, you're supposed to adjust. Geno's just not happy that, one, his players didn't adjust, but two, that the referees allowed the game to get extremely, extremely physical. Let's get to the postgame. I want people to understand the context of what Geno Auriemma was saying. Coaches usually don't come out to the benches, especially the head coach, until about 3 or so minutes before the warm-up clock stops. Whoever comes out second walks over to the coach that went out first, shake hands with the entire staff, and then they go back to the respective benches. Once you get into player introductions, at the end of the player introductions, they will introduce the head coach on both sides. Those two will walk to center court, shake hands. Sometimes Geno's more of a hug, and then you go your separate ways. Geno walked to half court to Dawn. Dawn didn't come over, and that pissed Geno off. And Geno was pissed before the game started. Then the game started. Then the third quarter happened. And then his team got beat up. Simply put, there is a protocol with this. Dawn Staley was absolutely in the wrong to not come up and shake Geno's hand or give him a hug after the player introductions. But Geno's wrong in how he handled it. You want to take that? You go behind the tunnel, you pull Dawn aside, and you tell her what it is. What that did is it took away the dominating performance of what South Carolina did to UConn. Instead of us talking about what they did to UConn, we're talking about what happened after the game. And that's a shame to Dawn Staley and her kids. They deserved better. So Dawn was wrong in regards to not shaking hands at center court after player introductions. Geno was 50 times more wrong to kind of start it after the game and then walk away. And Dawn was probably looked just as bad because there were some words that came out of Dawn Staley's mouth that you don't want to hear if you don't have the ability to lip read. Thank you for listening to episode 6 of The Coach's Edge with JY. We'll be back with another edition next week. Thank you to my producer, Matt George, who does a fantastic job. We'll see you next time on The Coach's Edge with JY.